Picture yourself standing over a hot grill. A thick cut of meat waits in front of you. It looks perfect. It smells amazing. Your mouth is already watering. You flip it. You plate it. You dig in. Now let me ask you something strange. Why is that meat from a cow? Why not a lion? Why not a wolf? Why not a tiger? Why not a shark? Humans hunt. Humans eat almost anything that moves. We always have. But there's an invisible line we never cross. And you've never once questioned it. Why do we always eat the hunted and almost never the hunter? Most people shrug and call it a taboo. We just don't eat those animals. But that's only the skin of the answer. Underneath sits a biological reason, a chemical reason, and a reason buried so deep in your DNA. Your body knew it long before any scientist proved it. Stay with me to the very end, because this was never really about predators. It's about you and what you're quietly made of. Start with the simplest question. Could you even eat a lion if you wanted to? The honest answer is yes. The meat isn't poison like a wild mushroom. One bite won't drop you dead. A few people in history have eaten lion. There are records of people cooking bear, alligator, even shark. So the option was always there. Yet almost no culture on Earth built a tradition around eating hunters. And the first reason is a quiet law of nature. Scientists call it the 10% rule. Here's what it means. Every time energy climbs the food chain, 90% of it vanishes. A blade of grass soaks up energy from the sun. A deer eats that grass, but the deer keeps only about 10% of it. The rest burns away, lost as heat, spent just staying alive. Then a lion eats the deer, and the same thing happens again. The lion keeps only 10% of the deer, and you're feeding on the leftovers of leftovers. Now think about what that costs. A lion has to eat around 15 to 20 pounds of meat a day just to stay alive. That's a huge pile of prey, burned down to keep one hunter breathing. Now imagine you're a prehistoric human. You're starving. You've got a choice. Risk your life fighting a lion for low energy meat, or hunt a deer. Far less danger, far more calories for the effort. The math wasn't even close. You always went for the prey, never the predator. But energy is only half the danger. The other half is invisible, and it's hiding inside every apex predator alive. It's called biomagnification. Here's how it works. Toxins enter the food chain right at the bottom. Pollutants in the water, heavy metals in the soil, chemicals soaked up by plants and tiny creatures. A small fish eats thousands of those tiny organisms. It swallows a little poison each time. Not enough to kill it, but it stays in the body. A bigger fish eats thousands of those small fish. Now the poison is concentrated. A higher dose, still survivable. Then a predator fish eats thousands of those. And the poison concentrates again. By the time you reach the top, the dose isn't a little higher, it can be millions of times higher than at the bottom. And this isn't a theory, it's measurable, it's documented. In 1966, a scientist named Charles Worster studied dying eagles along the Great Lakes. The eagles weren't being poisoned directly, they were eating fish. And those fish had soaked up DDT, a pesticide that traveled up the whole chain beneath them. By the top, the DDT was so concentrated, the eagles' eggs cracked before they could hatch. The eagles weren't dying from what they ate. They were dying from everything their food had eaten first. And this is what sits inside every predator. Mercury, lead, man-made chemicals the body can't break down. They pile up in fat tissue, they build over an entire lifetime. And you've already felt the edge of this yourself. You've been warned to eat tuna carefully, not because tuna is evil, but because tuna is a large predatory fish, high enough on the chain that its mercury actually matters. Now picture eating something even higher, a land apex predator, a bear, a wolf, an orca. The toxic load inside them isn't just higher, it's often staggering, and we haven't even reached the parasites yet, because predators carry something else inside, something that your immune system would hate. Predators eat raw flesh constantly, and their bodies host parasites built for that lifestyle. Parasites that evolved alongside them for millions of years. The most infamous is a tiny worm called trichinella. It hides in the muscle of meat eaters, eat infected meat undercooked, and the larvae hatch inside your gut. Then they crawl into your muscles, your body swells, your fever spikes. The pain is brutal. In the past, cases were often deadly, and bear meat is one of the most documented sources on Earth. Bears are the one big predator humans sometimes ate, and every culture that ate bear knew one rule: cook it all the way through, not for flavor, but because the alternative was agony. Now, picture a true apex predator, an animal that spent decades stacking up toxins and parasites, absorbing the baggage of everything it ever killed. Your body was never built to handle that. But here's where it gets even stranger, because a force older than the chemistry is at work. Something that grew inside you long before you understood any of this: disgust. Researchers studying food psychology found something remarkable. Humans have a built-in aversion to eating carnivores. It isn't only taught, it shows up in children before anyone teaches it. It appears in cultures that never met. Paul Rozin, a psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania, spent decades studying disgust. He found humans treat carnivore meat as deeply repulsive, at an almost pre-rational level. And the explanation is evolution. Ancestors who felt nothing about eating a predator sometimes died from the toxins, from the parasites, from the chemical load inside apex hunters. But the ancestors who felt a gut level no, who found the idea revolting without knowing why, those ancestors lived. They survived. They passed that feeling down, and you inherited it. Right now, imagine biting into a juicy wolf steak. Something in you recoiled before your brain even finished the thought. That's not culture. That's millions of years of survivors speaking through you. Your disgust is an ancient memory. But here's the twist. Because not every predator is off the menu, and the exceptions reveal something important. We do eat predatory fish carefully. We eat alligator. We eat bear. We eat shark in some places. We eat squid and octopus, fierce hunters of the sea. What do they all share? They sit just low enough on the chain, or we eat them rarely enough that the load stays manageable. So the rule was never eat a predator. The rule is simpler. The higher you climb, the more dangerous the meal becomes. And the animals at the very top, the lions, the wolves, the orcas, the tigers, they spent whole lifetimes concentrating what the world below them held. They aren't just animals. Eating them means swallowing all of it, compressed, stored, waiting. Your body knew this. Your ancestors learned it the hard way, so you'd never have to. And here's the part that changes your next meal. Every animal you've ever eaten, the chicken, the beef, the fish, every one of them sat low enough on the chain, low enough that the chemical load was survivable, low enough that the parasite risk was manageable, low enough that your ancient disgust never fired. The food on your plate is the result of millions of years of selection. You didn't choose it at random. Your entire way of eating was shaped by survival logic older than language. The cow on your plate isn't just food. It's a calculation your ancestors ran for generations, without ever writing it down. And the hunters at the top, the ones you'd never dream of eating, they're off the menu because that's where danger lives. In every form, at every level. Predators aren't only dangerous to hunt, they're dangerous to eat. And the whole system was built to keep you away from them, somehow without microscopes, without knowing what a toxin was, without ever seeing a parasite. Your ancestors already knew, and they passed it down the only way evolution allows. They made it feel wrong. And you're alive today because it worked.